Hey, you guys, how are you? I hope that you're doing well, and I hope that um, Wednesday is treating you well. I'm trying to look up something. Yeah, I found it. I'm trying to look up something about leadership. I know there was a quote that I had in my phone, and you guys bear with me as I'm playing with the lighting. If you've been following my page, then you see that the amazing Alta Smith owner and principal designer at Flourish came in and redid my home office. And so I am just adjusting to what's seen, what's not seen, making sure the lighting makes sense. It's like I'm torn between wanting y'all to see the sign, but not wanting my face covered. So we'll get there. I also see something back there that I want to move. But anyway, just been playing around with it. But I wanted to come in and have a kind of a serious talk with you today. Don't forget that Desiree will be joining me tomorrow. Desiree Cockcroft, amazing coach. And so I'm excited to have her with me. If you hear my children in the background or my husband, just act like you don't because everybody's home. Hey, Patrice. And so just wanted to pop in and do a quick power lunch with you guys. And I wanted to talk leadership today. I've been getting a lot of calls and I've been really busy because in times of crisis, transition, unrest, unknown, then usually individuals like myself who specialize in communication get a lot of calls from a lot of people who are not sure what to say internally and externally. And it's from leaders because with great leadership comes great responsibility. CEOs and CFOs and CHROs and all the C level, C suite people don't get paid what they get paid based necessarily on education um, or experience, because I'm sure you've had times that you're thinking like, how did they get that job? They get paid based on their level to handle stress and based on their level and their ability to navigate through trying times. I think the only exception to that we see is our current president. But in a lot of ways, I mean, you can't deny that he is a leader. He just has a leader with some messed up thought processes that don't necessarily lead us in the best directions. You know, leadership is not about title, it's about influence. And so when you look at the way that he wants to influence our country and the world, it's not necessarily to, our best interest. And so it's about his interest. And so that's something you have to be mindful of, leader, is about checking your ego, about humility, about admitting when you're wrong, about admitting when you don't know the answer. You don't always have to have the answer. One of the most authentic things a leader can say is, I'm not sure what to say right now. I always think back to what President Obama did when he went to South Carolina when there was the church shooting where, a young white man came in during Bible study and he shot up, a church. And one of the pastor of the church happened to be a congressman. And so President Obama and Michelle Obama and the Bidens and quite a few other political figures were there. And he was asked to do some words. I don't remember if it was a eulogy or just to make remarks. But in that moment, you could tell he was sad. He knew this man. He is a Black man. He is standing in a place of worship and understanding that, they had welcomed this young man in with open arms during Bible study, and it turned into a massacre. And you could see his face and you could see him thinking. He's a very prolific thinker. He's one of the few presidents that wrote a lot of his own speeches. And so he's very eloquent with words. And he is very opinionated, as Michelle has said many times. So he's usually not at a loss for what to say. But in that moment at that funeral, you could tell that he didn't know what to say. And so he just stopped and he sang Amazing Grace. And during that time, when he started to sing Amazing Grace, he surprised everyone and he helped pull together this sense of community during this traumatic moment for the families, for the faith-based leaders that were there, for the political leaders that were there, and he helped fill a space with something substantive versus just some political rhetoric or some placating conversation that really would not have had the impact that that song had in that moment. So as a leader, you need to know and have the instincts and be intuitive enough to know when to pivot. You need to, have your speech written or on your iPad and know before you step up, like, yeah, I had this plan, but maybe it's not the way it's supposed to go. And be led by something deep on the inside of you that says, this is what this audience came to see. This is what they need. And hopefully, as a leader, if you're preparing to speak, you're surveying the crowd, you're feeling the energy of the people in the room. In this day right now, how we're living, things are virtual. And so you have to spend a lot of time with yourself thinking, what do I want anybody watching? Every day as I do these power lunches, what do I want people to walk away with? And, one of my things is I never want it to be just talk. I want people to walk away with something executable, something impactful, something that they can chew on as they go through the rest of their week, and something that will make them think and hopefully make their life better, their business better, help them lead better, communicate better, provide some type of comfort during this time of unrest. And then that's why I also have guests that can share their stories, because I think there's power in sharing stories and in sharing, all the experiences that we all go through. So one of the things that, I wanted to pull up this quote I've had in my phone for years. First of all, a leader can't lead from within. You need to be out front. People can't follow you if you're not moving. And so leaders move. You make decisions, and you make tough decisions. Now, leaders also have people that they trust advisors. They have senior advisors. They have personal boards of development. They have brain trust, because none of us know everything. And so it's really important to have people around us that we can trust, to be vulnerable with, to say, I don't know, and to say, what do you think? And to know that they are going to give you an opinion with substance. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do what they said. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to take everything they said, but it does mean that you think enough to surround yourself with people smart enough, hopefully some even smarter than you in areas that you're weak in, that you can take what they said and you can pick out the pieces that are relevant to the gaps that are missing in what it is that you're thinking about. And so you need to have a personal board of directors or a brain trust or advisors, a cabinet, whatever you want to call them, some sister friends, and there's different levels. There's mentoring circles, there's mastermind circles, there's business associates, there's allies, there's advocates, and then there's friends. And, sometimes there's crossover in those things where I mentioned about, my best friend called me last night. She's on assignment in Malaysia for the next 3 years. And she's an executive, a top-ranking executive at Dell. She manages a business unit of almost 200 across multiple continents. And so we grew up in our careers together. We've been friends since we were 22 years old. We're 43 now. And so I have the great luxury of having a best friend that I can talk to as my friend about what's going on in my personal life. But then we can also strategize about business and about career and about what's going on in the world. And I prayed, I thank God for her. She's one of my lifers, and I've got a few lifers like that. But as I continue to evolve, I realized there were some people in my life that are still my friends, but they don't feed certain parts of me that need to be fed as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as a leader. And so I said a prayer for God to evolve and expand my territory, so expand my circle. So because there are women wired like me. It was funny, I was on a happy hour a couple of weeks ago with some other leaders, and some of them are in corporate and some of them own businesses. And I had it on speaker because of some things I was doing around the house, and my husband was home, and he He said, I thought this was a happy hour, but we were really all talking to each other about, what are you working on? What are you reading? How can I help you? What can you do? What can I do for you? How can I help you? And really just talking about some of the angst and some of the ebbs and flows and what's happening, financially, and what's happening in the world, and what's happening in community, and what's happening with, city planning, and et cetera, et cetera. And so to my husband, it's like, this don't sound like no happy hour that I've ever been invited to. But the thing is that you want to be surrounded by people who are like-minded. And so I realized that in building this business for the last 4 years, it's like I have a new baby. I have a 4-year-old baby. And so anybody who's had a 4-year-old baby, I got a 22-year-old baby, I got an 18-year-old baby, I got a 11-year-old baby, I got a 7-year-old baby. I talk about them all the time. And so the 4-year-old baby is the newest baby. And so of course I talk about it all the time. And I will tell you, I was wearing my husband out. Like he don't want to talk about it. He just want his wife. He want to talk about sex, and he want to talk about what's for dinner, and he want to talk about laundry, and he wants to just enjoy life together because he has a job as well. And so I had to realize that I could not have him as the sole advisor to the Power Network, or even the sole sounding board to the Power Network, for a couple of reasons. First, he's my husband, not my partner in that sense. I mean, he is my partner in every way, but he's not my business partner. This is my thing. And even though, he is my business partner by proxy, because he one of the funders, and it's because of him that I'm able to have the Power Network. But then also, John Carpenter, I think that's his name. It might not be John. We just gonna call him Pastor Carpenter. But he said something, and I was listening to a message, and it's probably like 2 years old. But he said if you are, as a leader, if you are sharing what's happening with you with someone who has never gone through the experience that you're going through, and they don't have a solution to your problem, then all you're doing is looking for someone that you can complain and murmur with. And that was very eye-opening for me, because there are some things that I'm endeavoring to do that just my husband hasn't experienced, just based on what his corporate life is. And, there's some things that he's endeavoring to do in the church and in the faith-based ministry that I've never experienced. So when we're talking to each other and we're giving advice, it's really conjecture, because neither one of us have experience in that particular area. And so you have to be mindful of that. And you really want to have some people in your camp that have been where you're trying to go. No one can take you where they haven't been, and no one should be giving you advice on something that they haven't done. They can, it's like, I can pull up Google Map just like you. I can read a book just like you, but there's nothing like experience. Google Map will get you there, but it's not going to tell you about that little restaurant off the beaten path. It's not going to tell you, I think about one of my favorite cities is in Savannah, Georgia. And, you can read about Savannah, you can look it up, but there's nothing like walking through the streets of Savannah. I tell people all the time, when you're there, it feels like God gets up in the morning before everybody else, and he actually puts that moss on the trees. And there's just a feeling that you have when you're there, and the food and just that part. And same with New Orleans and some other places in the city or in the country and in the world that you have to do. What do you do when you don't have a network around? There's no excuse for not having a network around. We have the internet. You have Instagram, you have Facebook, you can join groups, you can join mastermind sessions. So we could blame it on geography, but now it's about building the network. Some of my mentor, John Haynes, who he not on today, he must be in a meeting or something, but he usually try to support me in these. John and I met going on 6 years ago, and someone introduced us through Facebook, and he lived in Washington, D.C., and I lived in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and we built a relationship virtually. And coincidentally, his company moved him and his entire family to Wisconsin a little over a year ago. And prior to that, we had no in-person meetings. It had all been on the phone, but we had grew like family virtually. And he is my executive coach. He's my leadership coach. He's my mentor. I can call him about family. I love his wife, his son. And so When you don't have a network around, then that's when it's incumbent upon you to seek like-minded people on the internet, perhaps, and to try to build authentic relationships with them that way. It is possible. It is possible. It can transcend the internet. I will say, one of the, my company is called the PowHER Network, because I realize that so many people don't have a network, and it's not necessarily about who you know anymore. It's about who knows you and what do they know that you do. And so I'm always trying to encourage people to let people know what it is that you're interested in. So what are you posting about? What conversations are you engaging in? Are you engaging? It's not enough just to like and love. If you're really trying to build a network, then you show up. And if you can't show up because of distance, then you show up in comments, you show up in sharing, you show up in sponsoring other people to attend events. You show up however you can, in whatever capacity you have the ability to do it. But leaders notice who show up. I have created some amazing friendships through the PowHER Network from women who have just shown up and just stayed showing up. I mean, those are the ones that I'm usually like, okay, to the team, I think that, she could volunteer for us because she's shown up enough that, I now trust her with the network. Same with mentees. You can't just call me and say, will you be my mentor? No. First of all, because I'm a coach, and a lot of times people think they're looking for mentorship, but they're actually looking for coaching. And so because I'm a coach and that's what I do for a living, I'm always trying to be like, okay, second, I've got mentors. And usually the mentor picks the mentee. It's not one, it's an organic thing that happens. Usually, I'll see somebody doing something great. And I'll see that they have that thing. And then I'll say, you know what? And it's usually not even this thing. It's not like a marriage proposal or anything. It's just all of a sudden I just start pouring into them. They appreciate it. They start taking action on the things being poured into them. They show appreciation back. They make room. My mentees, can we get coffee? I'll come home. They'll have flowers and wine on my porch. They're in my inbox. They'll text me. They understand my schedule. They understand they may not be having long, drawn out conversations with me. They're not calling me at all hours of the day and night. They're texting me saying, hey, you got a minute to talk. And so they're just very respectful and mindful of that. Because it's so what's the difference between a coach and a mentor? A coach is someone, so let's take sports, for example. A coach, a basketball coach, Phil Jackson or Popovich, or, you think about Serena Williams' coach. A coach may never get in the game. They may never dribble the ball. They may never actually make the plays for you, but a coach is more invested in you becoming your best self than even they are invested in themselves. Like when I'm coaching someone, I'm not coaching you to make me better, and I'm not coaching you to make my brand better or bigger. I am coaching you to help you see the best parts of you. I'm coaching you to help you reach your highest destiny and help you take your vision to the next level. I'm helping to help you go higher and to help you realize strengths on the inside of you that you did not even have. The other difference with the coach is that it's usually paid services. And so that those are coaches. And so it's a transactional, it's a professional relationship. At times you may, venture into the personal side, but for the most part, that's what coaching is. Mentors, my mentees tend to be younger than me. Because I should not be mentoring someone who's already been where I'm going. It should be people, that are aspiring to get somewhere and that I can help them get there. Second of all, they are like sponges. They're looking to learn, and they're looking to learn in areas that I have a knowledge base in. And I spend a lot of time with my mentees, and I don't just spend time with them professionally speaking. I spend time pouring into their life, period. And so if it's about how they speak, if it's about how they dress, and I am a tough mentor, If I see something that's going to throw them off brand or throw them off track from what they're told me they're trying to do 5 years from now, 10 years from now, like my mentees know, I'll text you and be like, take that off the internet. What you doing? Or put on a whole shirt, or, you can't be tweeting that, or, do you understand what's happening in politics right now? If not, find out what's happening in politics before you post that, because I have a lot of millennial mentees. And so, and like the other piece of it, like I said, I'm looking for greatness because I'm looking for people who are actually going to execute. Nobody who's mentoring wants to waste their time. I will waste my time coaching because you're paying for my time, and so if you want to pay for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of my time, and you want to waste that time and come not prepared and be all over the place, I got paid regardless. With a mentor, that's me volunteering my time. So for every minute that I give to a mentor, that's time that I'm a mentee, that's time I'm not giving family. And so then during that time, then I've made a sacrifice. And so I need you to make a sacrifice too. What should a person look for in a mentor? A great mentor of mine, Robert Powell, who happens to be the largest employer of African Americans in the state of Wisconsin, always says that your mentor should have accomplished what you're trying to do times 2. And so, that is one of the best definitions I've heard of what you should look for in a mentor. There's a lot of fugazi. That's one of my favorite words. I got it from Sopranos. There's a lot of fake mentors out here. And there's a lot of us, T. Jake says that a lot of us are being mentored by failures, and he analogized it to the books that we read, the magazines like the Mademoiselles and the Essence and the Ebony. And when they talk about relationships, like there tends to be a single woman that's giving you relationship advice, and she's giving it to you from a place of, it didn't work for me, so don't do this because it won't work for you. Well, why aren't we getting advice from people who are prospering in that area? And that's what should be happening with your mentor. I can mentor individuals. I started a business from nothing. It literally was an idea in a notebook, and I still have the notebook. And from that notebook, I was able to create a business that allowed me to leave my corporate job, a business that gleans well over 6 figures a year. Literally started from nothing. That has touched thousands upon thousands upon people across the nation. Behind me, I have gubernatorial proclamations. I have proclamations from aldermen and senators, and I got a picture of Oprah behind me and some other things. And so there's been some really amazing things that I've been able to do in just 4 years. And so what should you look for in a mentor? Success. You should look for results. You should look for receipts, as the young people would say. If your mentor doesn't have receipts, if they don't have quantifiable, not just qualifiable things, because a lot of people can be, they life coaching and this and that, and they can be inspirational. And I love that. It's great to have inspiration and to be someone who inspires you. But if they are inspiring you based on reading a Brene Brown book, or based on reading a Seth Godin book, or based on watching Oprah Winfrey or listening to her podcast, what have they actually done? Because there's something to be said for experience. I have spent 20 plus years in the trenches before I stepped out and did this business. And this is not to negate that, but there's a lot of weekend coaching certifications. I was talking to someone who said, well, I don't want to coach because, I'm not certified. And I'm like, how how many people coaching that's not certified? Like, come on now. And so, your certification is your experience. So let me get back to this quote about leaders, because I'm about to run out of time. So in order to lead, you must be out front, not amongst the pack. You have to quit trying to fit in, gain validation, approval, and or be one of them. They may never understand you, may never truly like you, and may forever find something wrong with you. Despite that, keep being the absolute best you and watch how that inspires change in the world around you. And I wrote that, I don't remember when I wrote that, a few years ago. But just know that leadership is tough. Leadership it can be lonely. People don't understand you. They don't understand how you think. They don't understand how you move. You have to always be thinking big picture. They can't see from the vantage point that you can see. There's things that I can see for the PowHER Network that no one else can see but me. There are things that are planted into my spirit and into my heart as it relates to the PowHER Network that no one can see but me. No one is more vested than me. That's the other piece too. People start the business, they want to lead, or they want to lead in the workplace, and then they're disappointed in their team, or they're disappointed, whether you're in corporate or not. But it's like everything comes back to the responsibility of the leader. Everything is a reflection of the leader. So if your team is failing, it's because you're failing as a leader. And so what are you going to do about it? If your business is failing, it's because you're failing as a leader. So what are you going to do about it? Are you going to cry about it, or are you going to boss up? I love that meme that says I'm going to do both. But sometimes you just have to decide that this is not your place to lead. Everybody's trying to be a general. Everybody's trying to be general. That's the top of the food chain. If you're familiar with the military, like some people not called to be generals, some people called to be sergeants. So one of the first things that I ask clients is, what makes you different? What makes what you're going to do different than what's already out here? And if you don't have an answer to that question, if there's nothing different that people get when they get you, then why not go be somebody's sergeant that's already a dope general than trying to start a new thing yourself and splitting the people for a temporary moment, because you only can fake it for so long. There's all this fake it till you make it. Yeah, I don't believe in that. You have to face it until you make it. And so if you keep facing it till you make it, eventually your real face is going to show up, and everybody's going to be able to tell, like, whether you're leading or not. Anything that's not moving is dying. So leader, you got to move. Even water, if it's still for too long, becomes contaminated. If it doesn't have a current running through it, if it doesn't have air, if it doesn't have vegetation, then it becomes a contaminated water source that is no longer viable. And the same thing can be said for leaders. So you can't lead if you don't read. You can't lead if you're not learning. You can't lead if you're not teachable. That's what our people do. Everyone does want to lead. But the Bible tells us that the harvest is many, but the laborers are few. And so I do believe that there is a leader inside each and every one of us, because leadership is about influence, and we all have some sort of influence. But at what level should you be leading? Everybody should not be running a company. Everybody should not be pastoring a church. Everybody should not be leading a business unit. Everybody should not be leading a team. They in corporate America, they had what was called, leaders as far as those that led people, and then they had individual contributors. You could make more money, or as much money I made more money as an individual contributor most of the time than when I had a team reporting to me. And then I didn't even have to deal with the HR components that came with that. And so that is about to thine own self be true. That is about being honest with yourself about what is your capacity to lead. And our capacity changes as our life changes. My capacity to lead when I had babies was different than my capacity to lead now that I have adult children and older, younger children who can, make themselves something to eat and get themselves something to drink. That's a completely different thing. Leadership is glamorized. It is glamorized as this glamorous thing, and it is not. It is dirty. It is lonely. It is tough. It is hard. It is rewarding. It is fulfilling, but it is scary. It is sick. It can make you sick. It will keep you up at night. It is risky. It is a lot of times versus it being, people glamorize it in one sense, but then on the other end of it, they forget about your humanity. And so because you're a leader, they have these expectations of you that are beyond human. And it's like, just because I'm leading this movement, this thing, and because you look at me as PowHER Network Sean, does not mean human Sean does not have feelings, does not mean human Sean does not deal with human things. A lot of times I feel like even with clients, they forget, that I have a family, that I have a home, that I have work-life balance. I'm very, very strict about my boundaries. I am not answering you before 8 or after 5 unless there are some very extenuating circumstances. And I am not working on the weekends. I made a decision to work for myself for a reason. And, I was killing myself 7 days a week, 16, 18 hours a day. And my husband said to me, "Don't you make your own schedule?" And if you make your own schedule, why are you making it this crazy? And I had to stop. It took a few years, but I had to stop and say, you know what, he right. I had, and so of course, when you're starting out and you're in startup mode, you have to earn the rights to those things. But eventually, hopefully you'll get there, because at the end of the day, I can't lead anything if I'm not here. And I was killing myself trying to do and be all to everyone and trying not to let anyone down. And, I don't like or even want to quote Bill Cosby these days. But, there's a quote that says, the best way to fail is trying to please everyone. And I don't even know if he's the originator of that quote, but he's the person that's cited as saying it. And so I'm no longer at the place of trying to please everyone. First and foremost, I'm trying to please God. Next, I'm trying to make sure that I'm in a good space, because if I'm in a good space, we're all in a good space. And if I'm in a good space, my family is in a good space. And so those are the most critical things. And I am keen on boundaries. Dr. Henry McLeod has a whole boundary series. He's got a book called Boundaries. He's got a book called Boundaries for Leaders. He's got a book called Boundaries for Marriage, for couples. He's got all kinds of books around boundaries, and boundaries are necessary. And, too many people are building walls versus boundaries. Walls are meant to be impenetrable. I can't go through this wall right now if it's no door or no window. But if I just had a boundary here, if I just had like a half wall that I could step over, then that's a whole different thing. And so create boundaries, not walls. His name is Henry McLeod. Henry McLeod. So highly recommend those books. If you just look up boundaries, you will find him. Thank you, Jen. I love it too. Alta did her thing. I cannot take not 1 ounce of credit for it. Henry McLeod is the author of the Boundaries book. Henry McLeod. I think that's it. All right, you guys. So it's 12:36. On the days that I don't have a guest, I try to keep it short and sweet. Remember, leader, move. Have the time. That's the other piece I didn't want to miss. Right now, people are asking me about how to have tough conversations. Have the tough conversation, but remember how I started. If you don't know what to say, address it. Say, I realize that there are some things happening in the world, especially if you're white. I realize that there's some things happening in the world that are racist, that are unfair, and that our white privilege has us segmented and separated from what's happening. We have Black colleagues who are out constantly right now, attending funerals, dealing with sick family members, dealing with death. And then on top of that, now we have violence erupting all over the country. Speak facts. Due to the murder of George Floyd, due to police shootings, due to attacks. And so I'm not sure as a white person what to say right now, but what I do want to say is that I am against racism, that I am against oppression, that I am against police brutality, that I am against inhumanity. And I'm not sure what to say to our Black colleagues to make them feel better. But what I don't want to do is ignore that this is happening in their world. And so what I will do is show some grace and some understanding and give them space to talk about it should they want to, but also understand if they don't. I'm not gonna, I said this yesterday, it's like when someone passes, I'm not gonna ask how they're doing. They're not doing well. Yet, they're still maintaining their professionalism and showing up at work and showing up on these Zoom calls and trying to do the absolute best that they can do, because their bills still have to get paid. So what can we do in the meantime as a leader and as a company to make things a little easier? What can we do to show care? And that goes a long way, because people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. All right, you guys, I'm out. Peace, love, power. See you tomorrow with Desiree Cockcroft. You don't want to miss it. Tune in at noon. Bye.